Hey, what's up, ministers of Section 10? I'm so glad you guys can join us via video, if nothing else. And as I'm sure you're all aware by now, with the hurricane coming through, we decided to cancel the event that was going to go on Thursday evening, this evening. I don't know when you're watching this video, but we decided to cancel the event. Not so much because of the hurricane coming through, because of the weather, but there was just no food. It was kind of funny. So our folks went to go get food, and Sam's is like empty. Like, first of all, they couldn't even get a parking space in the parking lot, and then they go inside and it's just empty. Go to the grocery store and it's empty. So with all those things in consideration, we just decided not to do it and to move forward without it. So instead of it, we wanted to be able to make the most of Don's time and give you an opportunity just to hear from his heart and some of his expertise in church leadership and management and practical skills. And so we just decided to make a little video for you instead. It's not quite the same as the dinner and the fellowship and all that, but you do get the opportunity to kind of hear his heart and a lot of really practical church process skills and great things there. So first of all, Don, welcome, and tell us real quick just kind of who you are, family, those kind of things.
Well, good to be here. I was in Florida for a long time. I left because I was afraid of hurricanes. And no, I'm just kidding. So my name is Don Allensworth. I own the company called the New Ground Group, a church consulting firm. Basically, my heart is to put courage in pastors and work with pastors. And been married nearly 30 years. Was on church staff 24 years. Got 2 children, 23-year-old son, 21-year-old daughter, great kids. We got a great mom. Mm-hmm. And I get the privilege of traveling and working with churches.
Yeah, it's got to be so exciting. So we met Don through connections we had with Gateway Church in Texas, Robert Morris's church, and he's been a tremendous asset to us, not just as a personal friend, but really that church coach, consultant that walks beside you, in our world, and you know how it is. If you're watching this video, you know where we're at, trying to transition into this new church, and there's just a million different things going on at all times. It's really helpful to have somebody who's your advocate, both with all these contractors and all these kind of things, as well with the processes and procedures and such of the church. And so Don's kind of an expert at that. He'd probably never use those words, so I'll use it for him. He's kind of an expert at that. And so let's just get the ball rolling here. What would you call a healthy church in your opinion? What is a healthy church?
Well, I think a healthy church looks very different because a healthy church is an authentic church, a church that is
that's good.
Really reaching people in the community. I think a healthy church is a church that's putting courage in its members to go out and demonstrate the gospel in their community and to really impact every man, woman, and child in the community that they're living. So I think a healthy church is not can't be really formulated in a book. I think it's a church that is more focused on multiplication than addition, mm-hmm. And a church that takes the stewardship of people very seriously.
Right.
It's real easy to get churches confused, that have financial stewardship and do poorly with people stewardship. And right. So healthy church is really someone that is a church that's reaching people and empowering their people to reach others. Mm-hmm. So in my opinion.
Yeah, so you said this way back, and I thought this is powerful. I've stolen it, and I've said it so much now that I just claim it's mine. But the way you grow a healthy church is by growing healthy people.
That's right.
Right. You steward. You just kind of mentioned it. You said you steward people well. So how do you do that? Like, how do you grow healthy people?
Well, I think so often we look at it backwards, right? We want to plant a church in a community that we can grow a great church, and quite honestly, the way that we're going to really impact humanity is to build great communities from the church.
Yeah.
And so we need to be planting churches in areas that we can help build great communities and really and be outside the walls. I think the day and time in church history where we expected lost people to come to us, mm-hmm. It's a pretty sad day because we
right.
tend to treat them lost and look down at them. So
yeah.
I think the goal is really to put courage in our people to build a great community and to be involved and be connected. And here's one thing that I really realize and believe. My areas that I really focus on serving and sharing and giving, and so we understand that. But serving in the church is great, but the tool to demonstrating your faith in the community, the tool to reaching your community is to serve in the community.
Right.
Right, because that's how you earn the right to
right.
speak the name
right.
of Jesus. And so that's the community. The healthy church is very much involved in the community. It's not the walls are not there. The walls are.
Yeah.
the community walls.
Yeah, it's like the Without Walls International Church that we had here.
There we go.
Without Walls, the title at least. So, open-ended question: top reasons churches aren't healthy. Then, I mean, what are some of the big ones?
I'd say, I'm speaking of pastors, right?
Right.
Guys, here's what I'll tell you. I think the biggest challenge that we have today is pride. I think pride is the father of all sin, and I think whenever we as men begin to believe that we can control or manipulate something, when we begin to believe that we're entitled, pride and entitlement are hand in hand. And whenever we set ourselves apart rather than living a life set apart by God, then we're in trouble. And we begin to filter every decision of the church through our family and what's best for us rather than what's best for others. So I think for me, healthy churches and healthy leaders, really, we need to be internally motivated through the power of the Holy Spirit and externally focused on people, right? Mm-hmm. And so I would say the reason why many churches don't grow is because they have that backwards. They are, internally focused and they're externally motivated. So they're being reactive, right, rather than leading. So, right. I think that's one of the challenges. But then again, there are some churches that are just anointed. Yeah. And I often say you can take the best staff team and the best building and the best budget and the best area, and if the anointing's not there, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. But I think that's a lot of it. I think that it's important that we really focus on that. I think we hang on too long sometimes. I'll be honest. Mm-hmm. I kind of grew up in the generation where it was like you need to go and stay, and I do believe that's important. Mm-hmm. I think it's important to plant roots and to build relationships, but I think we can't get over our calling. Right. We need to continue to struggle with our calling as men of God, and understand that if God's not using us, is that a me issue? Mm-hmm. Is it a bad fit issue? When we begin to view ourselves as God's stewardship and view God's people as God's stewardship, then we have to view things a little bit differently. Right. So I don't know if that makes sense or not, but I think there's a lot of reasons why we don't grow, and some of them we don't understand. But quite honestly, we're not allowing the main thing to be the main thing. We're not focusing on guests. Maybe we're praying too much. Now that's pretty bold to say to these pastors. Yeah. I mean, I'm a man of prayer
without action.
Active faith. I mean, so we can pray about reaching people, mm-hmm. but if we're not doing a good job with people that are walking into our building, why are we wasting our time praying? Mm-hmm. Because it is just wasting time. It's got to be active faith.
Yeah, what you were talking about with how long you stay at a place. When I was with Tommy Tenney, the author of God Chasers, one of the things I asked him, I had some extended time with him, and I asked him all kinds of questions, and I'm taking notes and just learning all I can from, the guy that was part of the Brownsville Revival and has traveled for so long as an evangelist and written all these books. And so I asked him one of the questions, and I'll never forget this. I said, what is one of the biggest things you've learned in ministry that you would tell, a young minister? And he said, one of the hardest things in ministry that you'll ever learn is when you've lost the anointing. And he went back to John the Baptist, talking about John the Baptist in jail when he was doubting. But the principle was that when you lose the anointing, usually everybody around you knows it except you. Because we're so full of pride, we think we can still do it. We're Samson, still getting up thinking we still have the power of God. When we don't. And I think one of the best things we can do sometimes is check ourselves in those areas. So,
but if you think about it this way too, we know that God's called you in that leadership as pastors. He's called you. Yeah. That doesn't mean that you get a pass today for living a life of purity and obedience, right? Right. Like we have a choice every day as men to do the right thing, to live well, to honor God, and so we can grieve the Spirit with our gifts and step out on the stage and be great orators or great leaders and get something done, but we're grieving the Spirit. And so it's a complex thing. It's we know that leadership's anointed and ordained, but we still have to submit to the power of the Holy Spirit in our lives and focus on others. And here's my thing: is my prayer has always been, Lord, if I'm too long, I need to repentance handles that. And if I get to a point where I am not quick to repent, then you need to take me out of the game, right? Because the kingdom's more important than me, right? And that's kind of the bottom line.
That's good. All right, so you say you use this words a lot, language without leadership. That's one of the things that you kind of mention sometimes. What is that to you?
So I'm troubled by today's culture. I'm troubled by the nature of how we approach leadership, and I think so often, we really seek to be great leaders, to become great leaders, and in doing so, we're focusing on the wrong thing.
Right.
I think that as men of God and as leaders in the church, that we should have a great vision, and when we have a great vision, then great leadership is required to see that vision. I think we need to lead big and specific rather than big and general. The challenge is that if you want a great answer, you should ask a great question. Our generation, our culture of churches, our culture of communities, our organizations, we've lost the art of asking a great question. And so what happens is we go out and we will find a great answer, but if we've never asked a great question, then it's simply an activity or an event or an opportunity, and we will take someone else's great answer and we'll as ours. And what happens is we have this event. And let me tell you, if we've not asked a great question or a transformational question, we've not gotten a great answer or a transformational answer, then we've got language without leadership because there's no purpose or passion or process behind it. We're not leaning into it. And so often I found in the church is that people will follow you when you believe you're doing what you're supposed to do. And when we go find an event or activity, we're keeping people busy, we're watering down the gospel. And I truly believe that language without leadership is hypocrisy. If we're going to say it, I'll give you some words: rhythm, missional, great words, right? I mean, all of these things, we talk about all these things, and I'm like, so what does that mean? Tell me what that means. So I work with churches, and they say, here's our statement. We're going to, our goal is to reach every man, woman, and child. And I think that's a great statement. So what? What does that mean to you? That's very general. That doesn't move you to action. So we need to be specific enough in our language that it means something to our people, or we're going to really neutralize our words, and our words matter. We are called to make sure that our words matter. Right.
Yeah, so what you're talking about, and we've seen this in the church, and we've joked about it, late 90s or so, Rick Warren came on the scene and was big time purpose-driven church, and like every pastor in America started wearing Hawaiian shirts. So the question has to be answered for the individual. So the question of how do I reach my community is your question in Plant City and Seffner and Brandon and Riverview, and it's the same question, but it's a different answer. And you can take my answer and take it to Plant City, and it's probably not going to work. Or you can, Don lives in Atlanta. You can take Don's answer in Atlanta and take it to Brandon, and it's probably not going to work. Because you got to answer the question, answer it for yourself. You can't take Rick Warren's idea and think you're just going to somehow put that into wherever you're at and it's going to work. Most of the time it doesn't. I mean, there might be rare occasions, but most of the time it doesn't. And you got to find that answer yourself.
But even if it does, that's scary sometimes, right? So let's talk about building a building.
Creating a formula, right?
Yeah. So we're talking. This will be a multi-purpose room. Well, I don't know how many people will watch this, but that means something different to 5 different people. It means is a gymatorium. Is it got goals in it? What is a multi-purpose room? And so multi-purpose room, it's your language. You need to define it. What does that mean, and what is the use of that? That's specific. And so often we will just say, we're a missional church, or we're a purpose-driven church. Well, what does that mean? Tell me what that means, and how are you demonstrating that? If you're demonstrating it well, then you don't have to tell me anything. But if you have to explain it,
that's real good.
I'm questioning your language.
So every one of us leaders watching this is going to be, casting vision to the church or to ministries or different things over the course of, your career. You've used these words several times just a moment ago, but when you're talking to us a lot, we talk about big and specific. What do you mean by that? What is a big and specific call or question or answer or vision? What is
So if we look at a grid, like you've got got a window pane there, and you've got small and specific, small and general, big and specific. We look at it, and everything on the specific side moves us to action. Everything on the general side, that's more of the philosophical approach, right? And then we have the small on the bottom and the big on the top. The small on the bottom, it pushes us to less action. Big, we begin to get afraid, right? And so the challenge is that with our neurotransmitters and how our brain functions, I'm interested in what moves us to action. What causes you to get up in the morning? What causes you to go after it? And so big and specific is a vision that is big and specific is one that moves through your limbic region of your brain into your frontal cortex and causes you to have this adrenaline rush, to surge of energy to go and to engage and to have this laser focus. We can do the same thing, and a lot of times we will substitute the same dopamine release that we get when we have a philosophical conversation for this specific conversation. So I'm being very, very too much here. There's a lifetime of study here. So big and specific is this. What moves you to action? Mm-hmm. What moves you to the side where you have to act on it or you're going to fail? Yeah. It's really fun to talk about things. Mm-hmm. But what causes you to move from talking to doing? And that is being very specific about what God has called you to do. Right. Have a specific vision, and people will follow that. People want to be successful. They want to know they can do it, mm-hmm. and you need to be specific in leading that. So often we will sacrifice our ability to lead in the nature of being general because we don't want to offend anybody. Okay. We don't want to ruffle the feathers. Right. We don't want to be wrong. Right. We don't want to fail. Mm-hmm. We should be men who are willing to fail every day, or we need to not be in our positions. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, so big and specific, like as an illustration, so your daughter's doing amazing work in Haiti, literally right now, and she's doing all these orphanages and things. So the big and specific is big. We're going to touch the children of Haiti. That's a big goal. But it's specific because it's starting in this orphanage in Port-au-Prince, in this hill, on this place, with this child, so to speak. So that's kind of a definition or example. I'll give you a good example. So small and specific would be, what would it look like to really change a child, an orphan in Haiti's life? That's mm-hmm. small and specific. It's big to them. Small and general is, what would it take to see some orphans changed? Mm-hmm. Big and general would be, what would it take to see 1,000 orphans' lives changed? Yeah. That's big and general. Mm-hmm. Big and specific is, what would it take to see 1,000 orphans' lives changed this year? Yeah. One moves you to action. One causes sugar to excrete out of your liver and cause adrenaline and move you to action. Mm-hmm. Now we have a timeline and we have something very specific, mm-hmm. and we've got to go after it. If we're saying, what would it take to see 1,000's lives changed? It doesn't push us anywhere because there's no timeline. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes what makes things specific is the detail in a timeline. Yeah. So we went through this in our church, and it can come down to the simple things. We did it at multiple levels, but in our church we want to see each person lead 3 people to Christ this year, right? That's a big goal for most people, mm-hmm. but this year puts that specific number on it. It does. And so what does that mean? That means, as you as a pastor, that means I have to equip them, because mm-hmm. what is our role as pastors? Mm-hmm. To equip the saints for the work of the ministry, not to do it all. We're not to do it all, mm-hmm. to equip them. That means we have to equip them, and then we have to encourage them, but that also means we need a structure in place and a system in place for them to communicate back and forth, and to ask questions, and we can coach them. And when you do that on church-wide, that changes the world. Right. It changes your community. It motivates. It moves. Yeah, that's good. All right, let's switch gears a tad. Every one of us, this is one of the things we talked about several times in our sectional meetings, is guest follow-up and guests. I think this has been so much fun hearing this from you. So the fears of guests when they walk into a building. You've done all this research, you have all this data. Some of the stuff is almost like we know it, but we never heard it explained this way, but I think this is fun. So it's kind of funny. Explain to us the fears of guests. What's going on in their minds? All right, so we've interviewed, we're just under 1,600 first-time guests that visiting churches. So you do the math and how many you have to contact to speak to that many. Yeah. Many of them stuck in churches, many of them didn't. So we've got a pretty good data set across maybe 8 states, 9 states. So we know a lot about guests. The average guest makes up their mind whether they're going to come back to your church within the first 11 minutes. So, pastors, it all rises and falls on your shoulders, right? No, there are decisions made before that you ever get in the box. Right. And so we look at it from that perspective, from the time they drive onto the property, the time 11 minutes starts. That's the 11-minute window. It's not style of music. Their mind's made up before they ever even hear music most of the time because of how people have treated them. So we know the top 3 fears are this. Number 1 fear is that they're going to be asked to pray out loud, which was my personal experience as a 12-year-old. Number 2 fear is that they're going to walk through an unmarked door and be exposed out on the platform, mm-hmm. and be in front of everybody where you stand, mm-hmm. in the box preaching. And number 3 is that they're going to be identified for what they don't know. Yeah. Which it's funny, they're all 3 the same fears, they just manifest differently. Yeah. But when we really dig in and we begin to understand the psychology of connection, we all have that fear. Mm-hmm. Every one of us as men I don't know about women. I'm not that good with women. My wife would agree with that. But we walk into a restaurant. We walk into a church for the first time, and we're walking with an escape route in mind, guys. I mean, it's the truth, right? What if he brings up the snakes? How do I get out of here, right? So we do that, and so but it makes sense to us, and so we begin to build these dynamic connection modules, on those transitional times, and so it's definitely an interesting thing, but. They're scared to death. Most guests are scared to death. And I'll say this, interestingly enough, we've been, for the last 14 months, we've been studying when guests make their decision to become members of a church, which is an interesting study. And we, at this point, I think we're just over 70% of first-time guests make up their mind. They know that you're their pastor in the parking lot after their second visit, which, again, if we take that as big and specific, that challenges how we do membership, how we approach and invite people into classes, what we ask them to do, whether we downplay it. Membership is important. And if they know within a couple of weeks, and again, but we're working in these guest connections, they've gotten 12 contacts in 2 weeks from us. So, but it's pretty interesting.
So where do guests sit when they come in?
Well, they're going to sit not on the back row, because unless there's a wall behind them, they're going to sit on the second, third, fourth row from the back, and they're going to sit to the right or right to the left. We know where they're going to sit, so we should have some pew pastors in every one of those areas.
There's a whole strategy involved in that. And then I would throw this out there right with it. So what are the connections? From the time a person becomes a guest, they need to be connected in a few areas. What are those areas they need to be connected in before they're actually going to commit to the church and really be a part of it?
So we work off of a series of connection points. A connection with other people in the church, a connection with a pastor, which means that they're not going to join a church until they know that somebody on staff cares enough if they lost a loved one that would be there. So connection with other people in the church, a connection with a pastor, a connection with the ministry. Where do I belong? And then ultimately a connection with Jesus. And so what we do is we've taken this approach for the last 15 years that we need to get 3 of those 4 points of connection really firmed up in the first 45 to 50 days. We've got about 60 days before leadership families learn to lead and sit and give at a limited level if we don't do a good job with them. So we don't care which of those 3 come first, but we know this. People can come to your church, they can accept Christ, get saved, they can have life-changing experience. You can hear, Pastor, where have you been my whole life? This is the greatest thing ever. And we won't know where they are in 30 days. So we need 3 of those 4 points of connection that hold them long enough to be able to pour into their lives and put courage in their lives to keep them long enough. So I've got data, I've got tons and tons of data. It's the truth.
So we got to connect people. And one of the things I've experienced or seen, over the years in a lot of churches is the guest follow-up strategy is pray, right? I'm going to pray they come back next week. So they leave Sunday, please come back next week, especially if they look like they got money, right? And so it's like there's no real strategy to it. So we're not stewarding people well, right?
No.
And so the strategy can look a lot of different ways, and you've helped us in our strategy, and we can help you in your strategy and things like that. But the simple fact is you need a strategy. I don't know that there is one strategy that's like the magic, thing, or everybody to be doing it. But the strategy shouldn't be that you go home and you pray they come back, right? You got to be able to reach out to them. You got to connect them in at least 3 of those 4, or however you strategize that. But in all of our churches, no matter how large or small it is, we got to have some kind of plan, something to implement to be able to get these guests after they come in the first week or even the second week, to get them to stick, because we all have, a back door that's oftentimes just as wide open as the front door. And so people come in for a month and then they're gone, or 2 weeks and they're gone. And it's not that they don't like the church. It's not that they don't like the pastor. They just never connect. And so
Let me give you a good example.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we're friends, right? We're friends. You'd say, hey, Don, you in town this week? Why don't you come by sometime? I'd say, sure, that'd be nice. That'd be great. Would I ever show up? No. I'm never going to show up. Why? Because I don't want to impose. I don't know. Right. I don't know what's behind your door.
Right.
I don't know what I don't know. And but if you said, hey, Don, Thursday night at 7, we're going to watch a football game. Why don't you stop by? I'll be there.
Right.
Think of that in guest connection.
Now you know where you're going with it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'll say this: the greatest tool that we have is that we need to ask them for a yes until we get a no. If we don't get a no that first week from them, then we didn't ask them for a yes well enough.
Right.
We tend to think they don't want to be bothered. If they gave us their information,
right,
and if you do the work, you'll get their information. You have to do the work. I don't want to hear, we can't do that because we don't have any guests. You have them. You just need to work to get the information. They will, if they're saying yes to you, then we need to respond. So.
Well, would we rather over ask than under ask anytime?
Absolutely.
Right? You'd rather ask until you offended than never ask, and then you never. It's like, you know.
It's like buying a car.
Right.
We walk on a used car lot or a car lot, and we give car guys a bad rap here, so forgive me. But that, you know, we get bugged if we're just shopping. But the only thing worse than that is if you're going to a car lot and you need to buy a car and nobody will help you. We don't know why they're coming to church.
Yeah.
But and it doesn't matter why they're coming to church. We need to learn that over time.
Right.
But that they're there is what matters, and that we connect to that point.
That's so good. I think of the Wayne Gretzky quote. You know, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
That's good. Yeah.
If you don't call the people, if you don't reach out to the people, then you're never. I mean, what do you expect them to do? You know, if you're not doing it because you fear you're going to push them too hard or ask too much. I mean, you just got to keep asking. And that's part of stewarding people. And so whatever it looks like in our churches, we need some type of strategy.
Absolutely.
Some kind of formula, some kind of, and it can tweak and change constantly, but some kind of approach. And it can look radically different. I remember years ago when I was at Fort Alafai, my first youth pastorate, Ron and Julie Dixon, who most of you guys in this video, most of you guys know them, they implemented a strategy, and we would go out, they made homemade bread, and they would go out to guests during the week, and they would deliver the bread and introduce themselves and that kind of thing.
I have churches today that do it.
Right, and like in our culture in Brandon, that probably wouldn't work, but in that culture back then, it was great, and that's why you have to have your strategy. I have to have mine, and Atlanta has to have theirs, but you got to have some type of formula or some kind of something you're following in practice to best practice to get them back, you know. So,
I've got it's important.
Yeah, which leads into the next thing. I think so often, kind of like we're saying, we try to create a formula. We try to follow Rick Warren, or we try to become Stephen Furtick, or we're, you know, whatever the latest fad is within church leadership, and we try to implement what they do. We end up going to these classes where you're sitting there in a group coaching meeting and you're talking with the whole group, and one expert is teaching everybody else, right? That's the conference model, or whatever it might look like, the cohort model. And in my experience has been those don't work that well. What works a lot better is what we're experiencing with Don, and that is the church coaching model. And so instead of looking at a cohort where one person speaks to a crowd and tries to talk to them, it's really one person that's walking alongside of you that becomes your advocate. And so just talk about that. How do you think about that?
Well, you know, you probably could address that. It's not all fun and games, is it?
No.
So, you know, so we have an espoused theory of action that we, you know, you share a situation with me and I'll tell you how I think I would handle it. Right. And then we have a theory and practice, how I would really handle it. And, you know, many of us are a little self-deceived, and some of us are blind. You look up the Joe Harry window, and, you know, Joe, and you'll find that blind spot if you don't know the Joe Harry window. It's kind of a cool thing to look at. But so we have blind spots, or some of us are self-deceived. Some of us don't just want the truth. And so the challenge is when we go to a group coaching, and I think there's great value in going to conferences and those things, but you need to make sure that you understand what your value is.
Right.
What you're saying is, and I believe fully, is that there's value in having someone you trust that will tell you the truth and that will put courage in you. And sometimes that's kick you in the butt courage, right? It's going to be okay. It's you need to pull your pants up and go to work and do better. Like sometimes that's the thing, right? So we all, as men, we all need that, and we need that level of accountability. So, but I think one of the things that I see, I get invited in calls a lot to do group coaching, and I just don't do it, because I know I'm taking people from different backgrounds, different experiences, different personal areas of life, and different situations, and we're trying to put together a formula. I honestly believe that working with someone in their environment and helping them work out of their principal state of leadership, who they really are and their core values, really helps to develop the best of them. Yeah. You know, when so often we put things in our mind, well, I can't do that because, and if you're in a group coaching environment and you fill out a questionnaire, there's a lot of assumptions made, right? And then it's real easy for you to negate all that after the fact, and because it's not for you. So what I do is I come in, I look over your shoulder for about 90 or 120 days, and it's ugly. I look in the closets and everywhere else, and lots of data and lots of frustration there. And then we build from there and go from there. And I think that's the best way, because I know who you are, you know who I am, and we're able to move forward.
Yeah, you get the DNA of the church.
Absolutely, that's the whole
you
goal.
Know who they are.
Right, it's the whole goal. The gospel's the same. How we demonstrate it is different because we're created uniquely. But you know, we need to be speaking the truth. There's the fundamental principles that we have, but.
So the difference between like what you do as a consultant or a church coach or whatever you want to call that compared to the cohort model or group coach type model is that instead of giving one paradigm that everybody's supposed to fall into, you're walking next to the church saying what in your community with what your leaders have, what's the best way of doing it.
Sure. What's the best you?
Right. It reminds me of I'm always reminded when Bill Parcells went to the New England Patriots years ago as the head coach. He goes to the Patriots, and one of the people in the press, they asked him, they said, what kind of offense are you going to run or whatever? And he said, I don't know. He said, I can't tell you what I'm going to cook until I know what's in the kitchen.
That's good.
He said, I got to meet these players. I got to know what they're capable of before I can tell you what we're going to do. Well, that is the same kind of thing within our churches. Until you have somebody who comes beside you and knows your DNA, knows what leaders you have, knows what the culture is, they can't come in and tell you how to, what the best processes are, or even coach you through what the best processes are. And I think it's the same kind of thing. And so I'm a huge proponent of Don and his method of coaching. And whether it's Don or somebody else who's doing church, just find somebody. Every one of us needs that. You can call it an elder, you can call it a church mentor. Every one of us needs it. And you need somebody that can come in from a different perspective, give an outside resource, look at things differently, challenge our presuppositions, which Don does to me all the time in a beautiful way, and challenge our presuppositions and what we think, and force us to think outside of our comfort zones and outside of our normal way. And so we're becoming set up like this. Some of you are not even aware of this. Probably most of you aren't aware of this, but in our district, Ed Ivy and I are both doing church consulting now for the district. It's something that Super Terry Rayburn just approved, I don't know what it was, 6 weeks ago or something like that. And so we're going to be working with churches, and I realize that I'm probably too close here, but if you want Ed Ivy, I can give you his number, and he'll come in and sit with you and talk and help you take those next steps. And there's some other people I know that would probably be great at it as well. But I think it's really beneficial to have an outside mind that can step in and just kind of share some thoughts to help challenge the way that we naturally just fall into our groove, which ultimately becomes a rut and,
well,
it brings about a demise.
Yeah, the gospel's the same. It's got to be Christ-centered and truth-centered, but obviously, if we want to see something different, we need to think a little differently. And, I'm a pretty traditional guy. I want to reach people. I want to honor the tradition, but I don't want to get in the way of reaching people either.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, I just want to thank Don for his time. Do you have any last thoughts, anything you want to say?
Praying for you guys. We lived in Polk County for years, and then we were
God
here.
Bless you.
And then we were here in the Seffner area, and so, man, go get it done.
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank Don so much for being here, and sorry that we were not able to have the dinner and the big event, but at the same time, at least we were able to make a video. So I hope this has been valuable to you. I hope this has made you think. And if I can ever do anything for you, as I always say, let me know. We're a team. We're stronger together than we're ever going to be apart. So let's utilize that. Let's work together. Let's be stronger together. So
yeah, you can find me on Facebook, Don Allensworth. Friend me. Anything I can do to help, any resources I have, I'll be happy to share.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. God bless you. Stay safe during this hurricane. God bless you guys.